Going back and getting all this footage, were there any of the participants in the film, were any of them reluctant to speak about the project? Or?
Yes, that they were, and I think for very good reason. It's for them, particularly for the women involved who were nurturing him and raising him as if he were a child. It's a very emotionally complicated recollection, and so no one was against doing the film, but they definitely needed to feel that we're going to do right by their story. There was one person in the film who was needing a little kind of, I had to kind of persuade, which was the vet who is part of his life later on. For very obvious reasons, he was very uncertain about being on camera. But again, he very generously came through, and I think his part of the film is a very strong one and a very important one, given his take on, I don't want to give away the story too much, but as you know, Nim goes on this journey in our human world and ends up in some pretty unlikely and not very nice places. And one of the people who's part of that is in the film and tells us about what his experiences were in this institution he ends up in.
And one of the heroes of the film is a very unlikely character, being this kind of really, a deadhead.
I guess so. I never saw him that way. I always saw him as someone who had really understood what chimpanzees were like, and his great kind of, he builds a bridge to a chimpanzee, and he doesn't expect the chimpanzee to be like us. He becomes more like a chimp, and you see that in the film, that he kind of behaves a bit like a chimpanzee, and Nim is very comfortable with Bob Ingersoll, who's a great friend of his, and a friend to the very end. And they like to smoke joints together, and they like to hang out together, and wrestle and play, and by this time he's a powerful, alpha male chimpanzee, and Bob has a real way with him. They have a wonderful relationship, and then you see that in the film. It's one of the redemptive elements, I think, in our story is this wonderful bond those two people, that Bob has with Nim the chimp.
Right. It's hard. It is hard to distinguish sometimes between calling him a person and
because he has so many behavioural overlaps with us that we can recognise.
Yeah. So, we talked about like the protective element of bringing these people and all the people that are in the film to the film and making sure they felt comfortable. Do you show them other work you've done?
Yeah, I mean, most people were aware of
Man on Wire?
Man on Wire, which was a nice, it's kind of a nice calling card perhaps for people to trust you. They can see that film is really respectful of the characters, and it's the film did very well, I guess, as well. So that was helpful. But you have to really gain people's trust, and you have to do right by that, and try and respectfully tell the story. But you can't launder it. You've got to be truthful to what you think happened. That's your job, is to create a kind of dramatic story out of their lives. And I think the parallel with Man on Wire is that I try and put the audience in the moment of the story. It's not a retrospective hindsight kind of film. I try and get the people who had this relationship with Nim to really reconnect with their feelings and the events that they witnessed and were a part of. So the film should unfold like a kind of proper narrative movie, as opposed to a kind of a very constructed scientific kind of documentary, which it just isn't.